really different that no one else has ever done before.
Yeah.
But we want to see some case studies of where other people have done it before, so we know it works. It's like you can't have it both ways.
Hello and welcome to episode 60 of Rockstar CMO FM. The M is for marketing and the F, this is all you decide. As you're probably wondering, does the world need another effing marketing podcast? I'm your host, Ian Truscott, and this podcast serves as my excuse to chat with marketing friends, old and new, that I've met through my career, leading marketing teams and as a trusted client advisor. And I hope through these conversations to share some marketing street knowledge that will bring out the rockstar in you. Come say hello. You can find this podcast at Rockstar CMO on Twitter and LinkedIn. This episode was recorded on Friday the 30th of April, and wherever you are, I hope you've had a good week and you are well, safe, and staying as sane as you feel you need to be. In today's show, Jeff Clark returns for a slightly remixed one-hit wonder or Wonderwall. I meet Russ Powell, founder and MD of Sharper B2B Marketing, and I again get transported away in the Rockstar CMO virtual bar and join Robert Rose for a chat and a cocktail. Right, let's get started, shall we? On to our first segment. I'm again joined by Jeff Clark, Rockstar CMO advisor and former research director for Serious Decisions and Forrester. Regular listeners might remember our one-hit wonder or Wonderwall segment. Well, we're returning to that, only slightly remixed. Welcome back, Jeff. How are you, my friend?
Hello. I am doing well.
Right, and we've got it's not really a brand new section. It's a slightly amended remix.
Evolved. We're evolving.
Yes.
We're evolving men.
So we've evolved this to one hit wonder, Wonderwall, or one to watch as this next section, because I think what was happening before was we just couldn't decide that something was a one hit wonder or Wonderwall, and we needed a third option, right?
Well, not everything is, one and out or, on to the future. Sometimes it's like, I don't know. Yeah. Let's see what's going to happen to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we've got a good topic this week. Last week, I was chatting to Alex Lowe and we were talking about getting rid of MQLs and SQLs, or certainly that sort of handoff in the middle of the customer journey. And then the weird thing is previous to that, the week before, I was talking to Julie Ogilvie, as you know, and you made the introduction. Lovely conversation with her, and I'd urge anybody to go seek out that conversation. Not for my bit, but obviously for Julie's bit, because she was great. And she talked about MQLs, SQLs, TQLs, and ZQLs, if I remember it rightly, about all of that craziness that happens in the middle of the customer journey. And that's sort of really, I mean, we were discussing it before the show, and that's really about customer journey orchestration. So, customer journey orchestration. One hit wonder, Wonderwall, or one to watch. What say you, Jeff?
Well, I say we better figure out how to say it. We got to roll off the tongue. It's a lot of ones there, and but it is. So from the technology perspective, this area that Alexander referenced was the customer journey orchestration is a really interesting area. It's an area to watch, and I probably shouldn't have tipped my hand on that. but
I'm wondering where this is going to go.
Yeah, where's this going? Well, now I know where it's going, but it is. But I certainly dealt with a number of clients that were really struggling with the concept that it's supposed to solve, or the problem the challenge is supposed to solve. So one thing I was thinking is, we should start back with. And Alex had kind of referenced this too, the process versus, versus whether it's the technology or other aspects that you're trying to think of. It's like you really have to understand what the process you're trying to drive is, and that was one of the things that was clear when I was working with clients at Serious Decisions Forrester is that people would rush to. And probably Serious Decisions was as much responsible for this as anyone. It's like, okay, there's this process where we get inquiries and we send them to somebody to qualify. So we got MQLs, and then we send them to sales, and everyone just had that fixed in their head. And sometimes that is appropriate. And so as much as it's easy to say, let's just throw that out, because that's old guard or whatever, it's like, well, if you really analyze the process of understanding your addressable market, your opportunities, and as you engage them, as you're trying to work them through the system, for some companies where they're total net new, marketing has the major responsibility for generating opportunities. That works. That's not true for everybody. So one of the things I think you want to do first as a marketer is you need to define what the process is, engaged with the sales team. It's not marketing has a process by which we engage clients, create leads, and move them on. It's because you're doing it in parallel with sales, and you might be doing it in parallel with a teleservices team, and sales might own the teleservices team, or you might own the So there's too many variables to say there's a simple answer.
Yeah.
And so that's the first thing. And actually the monitoring of that process, as you're seeing, inquiries come in and people engaging with accounts and stuff like that, that should be done with sales as well, as opposed to marketing is monitoring their part of the process and sales is monitoring their part of the process.
Yeah.
And that's, one area. This is where, another one to watch category we might want to discuss at some point is the whole revenue operations function, because that's where you try to combine, the view of process and technology that supports all this together in one team. But it is the second, so one is sales and marketing to be looking and defining the process together. The second thing is that you need to be looking at it from an account perspective in business to business marketing and selling, not from a lead perspective, not from an individual, because there's the problem of, you get a lead, convert it to an opportunity, you get a second lead, same opportunity, you throw it away, as opposed to saying, I'm going to attach that to the opportunity and say, oh my gosh, I know two people part of a buying group. And now I've got, I should have an opportunity that has greater value, however I'm scoring it than before. And what's interesting about that is that I think before we got into the whole obsession about funnel metrics, from a marketing perspective, is that everybody in the company viewed it as we're selling to an account. We're not selling, and even the sales guy was getting a lead. He's getting a lead to an account, and that he's going to try to develop into an opportunity. So I think those are just two really big concepts that really make the discussion about, well, it's certainly what makes the dynamic of the MQL SQL conversion process a lot more complicated than it used to be.
As I was thinking when we were chatting ahead of time, this is a huge topic to cover in 20 minutes. But a couple of the things that are coming out there to me is one of the things as well is you talked about account-based selling and marketing there, which we've discussed on the show before. Now, but the problem with this part of this funnel technology from marketing automation perspective, they tend to focus on individual folks, don't they? And it's not until it gets into Salesforce that it's then, or your CRM, I should say, other great CRMs are available, that it actually starts to coalesce as an account, right? That we tend to market to individuals but sell to accounts.
Exactly.
Am I oversimplifying this?
No, you're not what you're observing is the oversimplification that we've been doing. And that's right. It's just, we should be thinking about how we're, how we're marketing and selling to accounts. And I know in an earlier episode, I think we chucked, or we made account-based marketing a one-hit wonder, only by virtue of the fact that it's all account-based marketing.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so from that perspective, when we talk about customer journey orchestration, that suggests tracking an individual, right? But if you're looking at an account, that opportunity, your opportunity with that organization may be being handed from one person to another. So one person maybe downloads the first white paper, has a look at it and thinks, oh, that's interesting. I'm going to recommend this to my boss because I don't have the budget for this. And I'm going to make that case. And then the boss picks it up and he has a look and he comes on your website. So there's no way that it's going to be very hard for you to understand that interaction happened in their office, right? If all you're thinking about is individuals rather than accounts.
Correct. And and customer journey orchestration has, like a lot of there's technical innovations in marketing that's starting in business to consumer marketing, and it's ebbing its way over into B2B. So if you look at some of the big vendors, Thunderhead, Kitewheel, et cetera, they're primarily B2C. They're not exclusively. And as a matter of fact, I remember dealing with a number of clients that were in that B2B, B2C, either we get tripped up on all the B's, the B2B or the B2C to B, or the fact that they just have two different business models, but they don't really have the budget to say, let's have different technical solutions for a variety of things. And then they get into this conundrum of, do I just buy the products that are out there on the market and make them work for tracking accounts, or do I build it? And I think that's where right now I'd say it would be difficult for the typical B2B marketing and selling organization to buy these platforms and adapt them. But there are companies that are doing very much the same thing with a suite of off-the-shelf tools. So if you sort of marry intent monitoring with tools like a People AI that aggregate interactions, so at least every interaction that we can capture, whether it's in the CRM or whether it's in the market automation tool or if it's off the website, everything we can capture, we can use AI to actually join things into accounts and even try to build buying groups and understand where buying groups are, and then trigger other follow-up interactions that sometimes the platform can do, but sometimes it's a matter of just making sure that the people who need to know, whether it's the salesman or the marketer, that need to know that there's you got a live one here, and it's time to work.
I just realized I'm applying my B2B filter to all of this stuff, but you're quite right that there's a distinct difference between B2C and B2B, or B2B to B2C and all those other things, where that's quite appropriate. But but really, when you're looking at complex buying processes that involves the topic of today, MQLs and SQLs, that's typically a B2B environment, isn't it? Where you've got that longer stage buying thing. I mean, even if you were to buy a car or a major, you would fall between MQ and SQL pretty quickly.
Pretty quickly. That's right.
That's
right.
Yeah. So from a customer journey orchestration perspective, how do we then do that? Then, so you've talked about how we can bring all of the interactions together in some of these other platforms, and I'm sure that there's other platforms available aside from people.ai until I start getting some sponsorship. And then how do you then orchestrate that customer journey? Because there's a lot of talk about the funnel, obviously, and that the funnel's a bit of not quite a bit of a wonky model, but also the customer journey. People do go through a journey when they're buying stuff, and then organizations go through that journey, as we discussed. That may be a handover between different people and a bit of a committee going on. But also, what do you make of this perception at the moment that people don't go through that nurture journey as we believe as marketers? They're actually moving backwards and forwards through that process until something happens, or that there are different people in an organization, there are different parts of that journey, and a decision can get made. Is the journey still the right way of describing that in that linear fashion?
So I think the reality is you are trying to apply a somewhat linear funnel concept to a journey that is nonlinear, that the customer is doing. But so let's take a couple of things that are probably easy to figure out. So one is, when it gets qualified for a salesperson to say there's a dollar value that I can attach to an opportunity, taking that to close is a linear journey.
Yes.
From an internal perspective.
Yeah. Because somebody's shown buying intent to such an extent that it's time to talk to a sales guy and handle their objections and make the transaction happen, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And then, but before that, so the other thing is that we know whether we've got somebody engaged or not, and we may and we should also be able to identify what our target market is, and what's the type of buyer and buying group that we're looking for that's going to lead to the things that we do and sell. So as much as the buyers may be going through, whatever odd process they go through, you're going to know what your target addressable market is. You're going to know what when you see people, I mean, with things like intent monitoring and stuff like that, you can start to see that they're engaged in the market. Yeah. And then with the tools that you've got from your marketing automation to your website and your CRM, when you've engaged them. So at the simplest form, it's like they're out there, they're looking, they're engaged, and so you've used broad brushstrokes, but you basically, you're categorizing the fact that it's like, okay, like I said before, we got a live one here. We got a couple leads. We can attach it to an opportunity. There were organizations that we were working with that basically would say, if there's 4,000 accounts out there, I'm going to set up an opportunity for each of those accounts. And they have no value and there's no score because they haven't done anything with. But as soon as we start to see them go through a process, even with fairly simple tools, we can start to.
That's proper ABM, right? You're identifying the accounts that you're going after, and you're going to market and sell to them. That's perfect.
But I would again to not discredit ABM, but it's like all organizations, and this is one of the things I struggle with other clients that we've been dealing with, is just like, gosh, you can't even define what account you're after. You can't even define what industry you're after. You can't even define what buyer. If you can't define those, you're just you're not providing any kind of intelligence to the process. You're just grabbing at stuff as it comes along, which is not smart from a marketing or selling perspective.
No, absolutely. So that's so I think as we draw, I think I know what you're going to say. I think I do.
I think I tipped my hand earlier.
Customer journey orchestration. I don't know what order I prefer this in, but customer journey orchestration, one to watch, one hit wonder, or Wonderwall. Is that a better way of saying it?
Yes, it's yes. It is definitely one to watch because the companies that are doing this work are being very successful in the B2C area. I've known large B2B clients that have been trying to build that internally, build that platform, and I know companies that are using off the shelf tools that are basically trying to approximate what a customer journey orchestration does. And so as time moves on, I believe the reason it's one to watch is how quickly does that move into being successful in the B2B selling and marketing world.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Thank you very much, Jeff. And I actually was, when you were mentioning intent, and I don't want to put you on the spot right now about what we talk about next week, but I quite fancy a chat about intent marketing from what you mentioned there. I think that's interesting. So maybe we'll go there next week.
You can if you want to intend to do that.
Yeah, see what you did then. So we intend to talk about intent. Now then, we need to think about the music. Now, we've not done a one to watch before, and we were discussing the criteria for one to watch. And based on the fact that we've done rather well in exploiting the music of the 70s, 80s.
and 60s. 60s. We might have even dipped into the 50s with one.
A one to watch. I think you're going to bring us a bit more up to date with this one.
I am, because it's you want to, there needs to be something you want to watch for. And so one that thematically, can kind of fit in this category in terms of the tune, but also is an act to watch is Dua Lipa. With the song, Be the One.
Perfect. Well, then I should be playing out with that. And then next week, will I see you next week on the show? I think we've already done that bit as well.
I may have a week off, but I'll be back.
All right. Well, I look forward to that, Jeff, and we'll speak to you then.
Okay.
Cheers, buddy.
Oh, when you're looking at the sun. Not a fool, not a fool, not a fool. No, you're not fooling anyone. Oh, but when you're gone, when you're gone, when you're gone, oh, baby, all the lights go out. Thinking of that, baby, I was wrong. Come back to me, baby, we can work this out.
Thank you, Jeff. And here's a top podcasting tip. Ask your regular guest if they're returning next week before you press record. As requested, that was Dua Lipa, Be the One from 2015, an excellent pick. So, customer journey orchestration is a one to watch. Would love to know what you think, or if you have something you'd like me to ask Jeff. On to my guest interview and the shortest introductory bio a guest has ever sent me. As you'll hear, Russ Powell is the founder and MD of Sharper B2B. He's a marketing heavyweight, B2B tech aficionado, and former stand-up comic. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Hi, Russ. Welcome to Rockstar CMO FM. How are you?
Very, very well. Thank you, Ian. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. Thanks for joining me. So for the listeners, I've just introduced you in the preamble to this. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So, yeah, I'm Russ, founder MD of Sharper B2B Marketing, career B2B marketer, having worked for a variety of large and small tech brands. But yeah, I'm a husband, I'm a dad, I'm a dog owner, I'm a occasional runner, a proud Brightonian, but now live in Berkshire, and also a former / recovering stand-up comic.
Yes, now that's where I wanted to start. Now, aside from Brighton being a jolly nice place, so I can imagine that you probably missed that if you're in Berkshire, but Berkshire's nice too.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we got to start with you being a former stand-up comic. And normally when I'm chatting to people, I ask them, well, what got them into marketing? But I think we've got to start here and like, what parallel do you see with being a stand-up comic and being a marketer?
Well, I think I guess it's more or less the same job, because you're basically talking to strangers and trying to elicit a reaction from them. And if that stand up, you're obviously trying to elicit a laugh or an emotional reaction. And with marketing, it's very much the same. You're not always trying to make people laugh, but you're at least trying to educate, start a conversation, elicit a reaction that then causes somebody to do something else, something that you would like them to do. And yeah, I feel like, so my marketing career and my comedy career really grew side by side. So I did my first ever stand-up gig, the 13th of December, 2009. Not that it's a date etched in my memory or anything like that. But at the time had recently just started my first marketing role as well. So
right.
I did the grad scheme at Fujitsu. Actually, I did sort of a general business degree, went on to the grad scheme at Fujitsu, did the first 6 months in project management. And no offense to any project managers listening to this, but wanted to blow my brains out because it was so boring.
But it's actually a good grounding, I think, for marketing, because a lot of time we are spinning a lot of plates, aren't we? You need to have a bit of that about you, I guess. But you've got to be able to organise and sort things out. But I quickly found that I needed the creative element that marketing brings as well. So was fortunate enough to sort of land a role still on the grad scheme as a comms exec on one of the accounts at Fujitsu, working with one of the other grads who was sort of spearheading a Prince's Trust charity initiative. Then they were running a comedy night, and my mate Paul, we're still really good friends now, was like, Russ, you're funny. You should have a go. Like, just have a go at stand up. Yeah. And
I'd always wanted to do it, but was a little bit scared to try it, and maybe a slightly morbid or depressing term, but my dad had passed away earlier on in the year, and I was just like, well, if you want to do something, just do it, just go for it, just seize the opportunity and do it. So kind of cobbled together 7 minutes of material, largely about being from Brighton and the preconceptions and assumptions that people make about you if you're from Brighton. And did this gig in December 2009, and it went surprisingly well. It went well, and I was actually, it's one of my little claim to fame. That first ever gig I did, I was on the bill with Rob Beckett, who is now the blonde guy with the teeth, and also Lloyd Griffith, who hosted Soccer AM for a while. So did that first gig. It went really well, and then booked a second gig, which I didn't realize at the time was not the perfect second gig. So I booked to do the King Gong competition at the Comedy Store in London, right? Which, if anyone doesn't know, is essentially a bear pit where you try and do 5 minutes without getting gonged off by the audience, right? So did this gig not really understanding what it was, right? But I beat the gong. I did 5 minutes on my first go. But obviously, because you're rattling through it, the 7 minutes that I had was the 5 minutes that I did. Yes. And if you're the only one that beats the gong, you win the night. If there's more than one of you that beats the gong, you then have to do another minute each. Oh, wow. And there was me and one other, a Scottish guy called Tony, who beat the gong. And the compere was like, right, Russ, Tony, you've got to do a minute. You've got to do another minute. Yeah. And I was like, I haven't got another minute. Oh, no. And he was like, well, you just have to make something up then. And I just like cobbled together some half thoughts, and obviously didn't win it on the night. But I think from there, kind of got the bug, because like I was like, I love doing this. Yeah. And it turns out I think I'm actually quite good at it as well. Yeah. And kind of from there, so like the comedy career and my marketing career really grew side by side for quite a while. Yeah. There was a point where comedy did take over, and that could have become my full-time career. But at the same time, I got engaged, was looking at getting married, and you think about houses and mortgages and kids and all that kind of stuff. And although comedy is a fantastic way to make a living and to do as a job, it's not necessarily the most stable of careers. And I guess for every Rob Beckett that you see on telly, there are a few hundred on the circuit, kind of not on the telly. You know what I mean? So, but no, it was amazing. It was a awesome way to kind of spend my 20s, kind of traveling around the country. I did gigs abroad and did Edinburgh a couple of times as well. And it was brilliant. I've made some lifelong friends out of comedy, and I think that training in comedy about how to talk to people, how to elicit reactions, how to get to the point quickly. I was going to say about coming to the point, because I've done, with having had senior marketing roles, I've had to be on stage quite a few times. And I must admit, part of me wants to be a stand-up comedian when I'm doing that rather than talking about B2B software. But it is about the fact that audience is only going to come away with 2 or 3 things that you say, right? Even if you prepare 45 minutes of material. Yeah. And it's making that story compelling, isn't it? It's the same as what we do as marketers. Yeah. And it's always the thing that I always remember before I started doing comedy, and you go to a comedy club and you'd watch a comic and you'd sit there roaring with laughter for 20 minutes, whatever. And someone would go, oh, what tell us one of their jokes. And you'd be like, I can't remember. But
you'd be like, and then you did a thing and you had to be there.
Yeah. It's that thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that must have been addictive. Like, I mean, we spent a lot of time talking about your comedy rather than about marketing, but that must have been very addictive almost to be in front of the audience. But, so the parallel you'd say is that we need to come to the point, we need to develop an emotional reaction whenever we do that. So what originally, and then so you've got, so I think you've answered the question. So really, you came out of university and you were sort of classically trained, ready to become a marketer. Then, by the sounds of things.
So I did. My degree was business management, which was a very generic. I get general business degree, but kind of the management element of it introduced lots of parts of psychology, and that at the time I didn't really know or appreciate would become kind of fundamental, both as a marketer and as a comic, because it's at the end of the day, it's all about people. It's about how you talk to, engage with, and interact with people as people. And that's kind of the thing that B2B struggles with a lot, is that
I was going to say,
like businesses talk to people like Business Bot 4000, and it's like, no, they're Russ, they're Ian, they're people. They have they're fleshy, squidgy people with brains. They're not hard calculating robots. And it's So that from a B2B marketing perspective, that's the advice that you're giving there, is that we need to be people focused rather than talking to businesses. Yeah, absolutely. And there's a fantastic book. I've not read it yet, but Paul Cash from Rooster Punk has just launched a book, humanizing B2B, which is on my must read list. And shouting out the competition here, but he's an awesome guy who knows what he's talking about. And it's one of those fundamental things that at the end of the day, it's still people making decisions. It's people you need to talk to, people you need to convince, and people like to be talked to like they're people.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a sucker for book recommendations, so I'm gonna seek that out and probably put it in the show notes as well. So
I ordered a whole load off Amazon last night. Actually, my reading stat got low, so I had to. Maybe that's so I'm addicted to telling jokes and reading books.
Marketing books. Yeah, I'm the same. Do you listen to the Marketing Book podcast?
I didn't know there was a Marketing Book podcast. Yeah,
you should seek it out, because I think that Amazon are profiting from me listening to that podcast. every week I want to read a new marketing book. Anyway, I've digressed slightly. So you've been a career B2B marketer. You worked for Dell, Fujitsu, and Atos, and last year you made the switch to be an agency owner. And I know that a lot of marketers right now, there's a lot of change in the labour market, and people are thinking about going on their own. What's been your experience of doing that?
The main catalyst for sort of start of the agency was actually redundancy. So I was in an in-house role at a small sort of Microsoft gold partner called Innovate, who now no longer exist, hence why I was made redundant. And this was kind of February last year, literally just as COVID was kicking in and everything was happening. Yeah. But via the power of LinkedIn, I was connected to a chap called Dom Hawes, who is group CEO of Selby Anderson Group, who are Sharper's now parent company. So got a chat to Dom, said, do you have need for a senior B2B marketer? He's been around the block a few times. He said, actually we do. So I had a conversation, and they sort of brought me in. But the idea for Sharper had really been, and I'd been building the business plan kind of in the background for a couple of years. And it was really to tackle the three main frustrations that I felt as a client-side marketer. So Sharper's mission is to make B2B marketing as a whole more creative, more valued, and more commercially successful. And it's really, and those three frustrations were a lack of creativity. Everyone's got a blue logo. Everyone uses the same stock imagery. Everyone talks about hyper-converge, ultra-optimize, yada. And there's leading vendors, unique, all AI and machine learning and all that kind of stuff. But because everyone does the same thing, there's a really clear opportunity to be different, to be creative, to stand out. the value and commercial responsibility side of things is the value is primarily from being in large tech businesses where the marketing department still gets called the colouring in department.
Yeah.
A lot of time. But that is because marketing and marketers either don't understand or don't effectively communicate the value they add to their business.
Yeah.
And sort of an element of that is the commercial responsibility. So I've seen it numerous times where you have marketers, and often sometimes some very senior marketers who don't understand the commercial responsibility they have to their business. So creativity, value, commercial responsibility is
I love that. I love the creativity thing. Do you find it hard to actually push that through? Because I've had that in my career where the leadership team of B2B organizations tend to look at the taillights of their big competitor and what a big competitor X doing, shouldn't we be doing that? And I once did an exercise where I took the copy of somebody's web page, and then I took the copy of their two main competitors and said, can you identify who you are? And they couldn't, right? Because they're all saying the same thing, because they're copying each other, because they're all looking at each other going. So, but the resistance I had when trying to do something genuinely different was that a lot of B2B organizations are quite conservative like that. How do you find that as a struggle?
Yeah. So I think kind of what you're talking about is the age old brief that you get is that we need to do something creative. We need to do something really different that no one else has ever done before. Yeah. But we want to see some case studies of where other people have done it before, so we know it works. It's like you can't have it both ways. You can't have it both ways. But I think that, and a lot of B2B firms are conservative with a small c, but there are different appetites for creativity, but because lots of B2B is very dry and dull. You don't have to be mind-blowingly inventive and creative to be seen as creative, but you can be creative with just slight nudges, slight tweaks of things that help you stand out against the competition. So and I often think there's kind of a misunderstanding of what creativity is, especially in a B2B sense. So lots of people think that creativity is just for creatives. So it's just about fantastic design and pictures and marvelous video and animation, all that kind of stuff. But you can be creative with data. You can be creative with research, with processes and things like that. And it's really taking what already exists, thinking about it in a different way to produce something new. And that's often, and a lot of that ties back to comedy. Because there's not really anything new to talk about. You just talk about the same things, but in a different way, from a different approach. So it's about taking the old and mashing them together to create something new and different.
No, I like that. I also, and we talk about it on the show quite a bit actually, about this idea that CMOs and senior leaders need to get synced up with the rest of the C-suite in terms of growth, in terms of what it is the company's trying to achieve, and make themselves relevant to those goals rather than, like you say, be the colouring in department. I'm sure that we could explore that in more detail in terms of, but absolutely that's what we've got to do. But I've got to move on to the last question, I think. So, I was going to ask you a second thing. You've just celebrated your first year of business. So how's that gone?
We have, we are 1 year old as an agency, and it's been bizarre and incredible and wonderful all at the same time. Obviously, born in lockdown, so I launched the agency from a combination of my shed down the end of the garden, but in February that was a bit too cold, so I decamped to my bedroom. So kind of launched the agency, sat on my bed, and we've kind of won clients and grown, and we're building out the team, and I always say it's the hardest job I've ever had, but I just love it so much. I absolutely love what we do as an agency, the clients we work with, and kind of what we're building as well. It's
I think that's also great advice to people that do start this stuff. If you got to love it, right? Because it is all consuming. I mean, I've done it myself, and you are constantly only thinking about that, aren't you? And if you didn't love that, then it's going to be quite the curse. Well, now I will move on to our last question.
Okay.
And that is that, like all rock stars, we chuck things into the swimming pool. Ours is a portal to hell for all the BS snake oil and overhyped trends from this craft we love. What would you chuck in the Rockstar CMO swimming pool?
So if we're talking BS snake oil and overhyped trends,
yes,
I am chucking ABM into the into the pool. But I will contextualize this slightly. So I'm not chucking ABM itself into the pool. I am chucking the bullshit masquerading as ABM into the pool. So ABM done properly, when it is account based, accounts as a market of one, and everything dedicated to it in a really strategic, thought through, considered way, is awesome. There's case studies upon case studies proving that it works, and it does what it does. It takes a lot of time, takes a lot of resource, takes a lot of effort, but it is incredibly valuable when done properly on that one-to-one basis. It's all the other stuff that gets talked about ABM that really gets my goat and grinds my gears. And it's even so I even wrote a blog about it. Three reasons not to do ABM.
Right.
And one of the reasons is that 66% of what gets talked about as ABM isn't ABM.
Yeah.
So you have the one-to-one, which is ABM. You then have the one-to-few and the one-to-many. Yeah. To me, one-to-few and one-to-many is just good marketing. Yeah. It's just good marketing with proper segmentation, identification of the organizations, individuals, markets you want to go after, and execution of that. Yeah. And so I'm binning,
I agree.
I'm binning off all the bullshit, all the nonsense, all the bollocks.
I think that happens quite a lot with the swimming pool, is that people are throwing in the hype around something that's perfectly good to do, but it's actually all the hype and rubbish that people say about it that's the problem.
And I think it's also it's damaging that people think they're doing ABM, and it doesn't work, so they go, well, no, ABM doesn't work. It's like, no, it does if you do ABM. You're not doing ABM, you're doing the nonsense bit that isn't.
Cool. Well, I think that's an excellent nomination. And do please share with me a link to that blog post, and I'll add it to the show notes.
Will do.
And on the subject of where people can find you, where's your agency?
Physically, we're no longer in my bedroom. Our HQ is in Wokingham. So on the outskirts of Reading, but our website is obviously sharperb2b.com. You will find us on LinkedIn. You'll find me on LinkedIn posting out random nonsense on an almost daily basis.
Well, I'll include the links to you. Are you on Twitter as well?
No, I was in my comedy days, but have phased it out from a personal side of things.
So I'll include a link to your agency, to you on LinkedIn in the show notes, and I look forward to chatting to you again. Thank you very much.
No, it's been brilliant. Cheers, Ian. Thanks for having me on.
Cheers. Splendid. Thank you, Russ. The bullshit around ABM, a fabulous candidate for the Rockstar CMO swimming pool, and a topic Jeff and I discussed in episode 50, the golden account-based favorability journey to the virtual bar episode. I will, of course, include links to that, to Russ on LinkedIn and his agency website in the show notes. Right, it's that time of the week, Friday evening, and time to find out where my friend and content marketing guru, Robert Rose, would like to transport us to for a marketing thought and a cocktail in the Rockstar CMO virtual bar. Good evening, Robert. What are you drinking?
Oh, hello, my friend. Nice to see you in the bar here. You know, tonight is as simple as it gets. we often, you and I, meet in this bar and do ourselves up with fancy cocktails and, with lots of ingredients. And for some reason, inexplicably, every week you struggle to find the right ingredients. Not really sure why. But this week it couldn't be simpler. I am having, and we are having, one of my simplest and most favorite beers, which is a Mexican beer, actually, called Modelo. And it's as simple as it gets, very lightly salt-rimmed glass, a little lime in the beer, and just it's great for sitting outside and watching the sunset.
Oh, lovely. I love a Modelo. I don't see it very often here, but yes, it was.
I can imagine, yes.
And it's one of the things I miss about the US is the quality of the Mexican food and the Mexican beer that accompanies it. I do have some Mexican beer in the beer fridge in my office, which I can see, but I have to go with my desktop bar. So let me see if I can conjure up a similar libation from what is on my desk. So what I have, you need to have that cold, right? So I'm going to make mine cold.
Very cold is good.
Very cold. And that was the nice thing about beer, Americans serving Mexican beer in those frosted glasses. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I am going to, I'm going to kick off with some, just start off with a little bit of gin. I've got, what's this? Oh, it's my usual, which is the, oh no, I've brought the wrong, I've brought the Smiths to my desk by mistake. So you're not going to like that. So I've got a bit of Smiths, but I will redeem myself with a bit of Fever Tree cucumber tonic water. So I pour a bit of that in there.
It's the classic.
It is the classic.
You should buy yourself a variety of tonics so that you can experiment.
Well, you know what I should have is a variety of drinks.
Yeah.
That is delicious, Robert.
Yeah.
Cheers to you, my friend. I could drink these.
This is one of those things where you can have 4 or 5 of those, and it makes the evening go down swell.
Yeah, I could drink this. Is it the dark Modelo that you like?
I like both. What we're drinking tonight is the lighter version, which is as my dad used to call it, a drinking beer, right? Not a sipping beer.
Sometimes that's referred over here as a cooking beer, just your regular.
Yeah, well, there's that too. That's most American beer, quite frankly.
So, and this could open up anyway. Where are we going to be transported to this week to drink these?
Well, I think we have to be at the beach, and I know we get to the beach quite a bit. But I think we'll stay here in beautiful Los Angeles. We are coming off of lockdown here in Southern California, and knock on wood, doing better than the rest of the other 49 states in terms of new cases and all those kinds of things. So they have lifted many of the mandates here, including, of course, the CDC has now come out and said that the masks can be worn out, don't have to be worn outside. So I think we find ourselves a comfy little cafe on the beach here in LA and watch the sunset, because there's a beautiful hotel actually where they have a lovely porch. Which is a little elevated, so you can actually watch the sunset here, and it's just absolutely spectacular.
Oh, that sounds amazing. We're having a grey, miserable day today, so that I'm elevated and transported by the very vision of what
isn't that. That's Tuesday in England, yes.
Yes. Yeah, we've been spoiled. I think maybe we've had our summer already. So.
Oh, I see. Yeah, well.
This is it now. So, and then, sitting on a porch with a couple of beers, looking at a sunset sounds perfect. But we will, as I do, interrupt our thoughts with a conversation about marketing. And what is it we'd be discussing this week, Robert?
Well, it's got something to do with, you're familiar with the term, if it's not broken, don't fix it.
Yeah.
And, the funny thing is, this has just come up for me in the last week in talking, about this from two perspectives. One is from a personal perspective. So, when we sort of leave well enough alone, in other words, don't fix, those things that are broken, it can lead to a lot bigger challenges, right? So, and the personal situation is my refrigerator started making these very weird sounds about, 2 months ago. And I was like, it's weird sound. What are you going to do? Right. I'll live with the noise. The refrigerator still worked. But then one day, nope, the refrigerator decided to stop working. And if I had just gotten it fixed when it started making noise, I wouldn't have to deal with what we had to deal with last week, which was, of course, emptying out the refrigerator, waiting for the repair guy, doing its thing. It was a whole ton of work. Yeah. And so the interesting thing to me is, and this plays into what also happened last week, is that, part of our job as marketing team leads is to be watching out for those noisy refrigerators. And so we're always watching out for those warning signs and in trying to invest in continuous change in many cases. So product marketing, communications, we're all prepared to respond to any new disruption as it might come up. And of course, that means revising or improving content programs, our platforms, because things that may work today, well, they might be a noisy refrigerator and become broken tomorrow. And so, interestingly, this client that I was speaking with had this exact problem. They're a B2C company, and there's, the big thing in B2C now is to create communities, right? To create this idea of subscribed audience or community. And they were doing that and had done that for their customers, where you could buy their product and, without going into too much detail, you could scan a QR code and basically get access to this this private community of customers. And they had content in there and exclusive things and how to use and all this kind of thing. And it was wildly successful. They over the course of the 9 months, they had gotten about 250,000 subscribers to their community. And it was great. Wow. It was all, everybody was happy with it. But the brand team last month, a couple of months ago, actually now, decided they were going to pull rank and look at the success and go, hey, I know what we need to do. We need to open this up to everybody, right? Customers and not, we'll get all sorts of SEO benefit out of it. We'll get the brand benefit out of it. We'll get all this stuff win out of it. And then what happened is they just ruined it. They just ruined it, because as they started to see, the new people that were coming in had no context for all the how-tos and exclusive content that the customers had access to. So that started to perform really poorly, which of course gave them incentive to do new content, which was much more around how to buy the product, how to get the product, which of course really killed off the audience quite, they no more sense of exclusivity or anything. And they basically broke the whole thing by trying to fix it. And what it just teaches me is that, whenever we're trying to fix something that's already working as it is intended, we should just take a beat and ask ourselves, is what we're really trying to do is do something new instead, right? And that's, and anyway, that's what we're talking about this week.
I like that. And I think maybe you've talked about this before, in that there's a sense of scale sometimes, isn't there? Particularly in B2C, that it's like, many of us would look at an audience that you've managed to capture in that period of time as 250,000 going, well, that's doing rather well. We can certainly leverage that audience for some benefit of ours from a content marketing perspective. But then when you look at the potential audience, perhaps for that product, that didn't seem to be so good. But you've got 250,000 engaged consumers, right? Rather than just anybody.
Exactly. Well, and what I've been thinking a lot about this lately. My friend Joe Polizzi and I were talking about this just the other day on our podcast, where we were talking about, one of the things that we often see is businesses these days doing version 2.0 or version 3.0 of their content strategy. And the reason they're on 2.0 or 3.0 is because they launched some cool blog or some cool publication, and treated it like just an alternative to advertising, right? They just, it was just, for them, it was just an alternative to advertising. And if it engaged people, great. And that's, it seems like a good alternative. And it ultimately, at some point, doesn't perform as well because it just gets old and it's not it's not built for that. And instead, the ones that seem to be lasting, if we look at literally the Red Bull media houses and some of these other companies that, Cleveland Clinic and some of these other brands that tend to have built something in 2013 that's still as good, if not exponentially better today, is that they recognized that there is a strategic purpose and a long game to be played here, and they stick to it. Yeah. And they just, they stick on making it better, certainly fixing what's broken, but they're not trying to sort of just look at it as a temporary campaign of how it's a replacement for some other campaign they did.
Yeah. And I, when I talk to clients or employers about starting those kinds of initiatives, I'm always counseling that this is not going to be something that's going to bring a return in the first 2, 3, 4, 5 quarters potentially, right? That you're building an owned asset and that takes time.
Yeah, that's right. It's like, we've said it on this show and we've said it on other places that this is much more of a product development methodology than it is a campaign-based methodology. And looking at it as such can really help you because, trying to look at what's broken or what needs fixing, if you look at it in that very short-term campaign, rinse and repeat type of methodology, it can very much look like things are broken on a month-to-month or week-to-week basis. But if you look at it as a product that's going to get better and better over time, all of a sudden you wouldn't, for example, if you made iPhones, you wouldn't go, ooh, there's a whole other market out there. This would make this better if we just opened the iPhone up to Android as well.
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean? It's like, no, that's not that you're breaking the product when it's not broken. Yeah. And that's often what we do with our marketing content is we go, ooh, there's something bigger and better out there and shiny. We should just fix this thing.
Yeah. Well, I think what I was thinking about there with your B2C channel was that, or client, is that there's no going back from there, is there? I mean, you've ruined it. I mean, you've created this lovely community of customers that were leaning in and very engaged and felt they were part of something. You can't do that again, can you? Because you've broken it.
I think it's situational, probably. I think in their particular case, they could fix it now that it definitely is broken.
But you can't. What would you do? You couldn't scrub the community and say, "I'm sorry, you're no longer welcome because you don't qualify." Would they need to spin it up around a different?
Well, they could. I mean, you're not taking anything. If you think about it, if they were to suddenly make it, back to, if they suddenly, tomorrow turned it back to you needed to have purchased the product, they're not going to, the only people they might turn off are people, that's very small percentage of people who were perhaps engaged and enough that they were going to buy the product and now all of a sudden, and were loyal and passionate enough about the content that they were really getting a lot out of it, which of course makes infinite business case to say, well, if there's enough of those, you should have built something new to begin with. So I think the risk of turning it back into a risk of turning it back into a customer only community is probably pretty low. However, to your point, that risk grows day by day, hour by hour.
But I mean, the thing they've also lost though haven't they lost some level of trust with that audience? Even if they were to roll back, that audience, aren't they gone? Aren't they already now just dumping those emails into spam, or no longer feeling the love? Is there a way back in that respect?
Yeah, there's probably a certain percentage of them that wouldn't come back, right?
Yeah.
There's probably a certain percentage of that wouldn't come back, but I think that's a great point is that you will have forever lost some of that goodwill that you had built up with your customers by basically spoiling it with, ostensibly, an assumption that you're always a buyer, right? You're never part of a community. You're actually, we see you always as a potential customer and buy. And so it's like, and then they say bye, right?
Yeah. The thrill is gone.
But again, I think there's probably some opportunity there. Certainly if I'm the marketing lead there, I'm unfixing the brake. You know what I mean? It's like, even if it, for that, it seems like, let's at least try and save the patient before it, dies on the table.
Yeah, what a shame. And normally we have a bit more of an uplifting tale over these drinks. Maybe this we're having one of those melancholy drinking evenings, lamenting the loss of the audience that now no longer love us. But what's the positive on this is that there's that potential, isn't it? We just got to be really careful when we've created an audience to be respectful of that, I guess, isn't it? And if you don't go changing it.
Yeah, I think it's all positive. I think these are good problems to have, right?
Yeah.
If you have a problem that your community has been, your customer community has been wildly successful, and your brand team is coming to you and saying, "Hey, we need to open this up for all of these amazing new customers we're going to get."
Yeah.
It's a good challenge, right? That's a nice problem to have to face. Yeah, they arguably made a mistake in what they did, but this means they're doing a lot of other things really well. Yeah.
So there's a way back. So that's a good end to the story then.
For sure.
You should return to the bar.
It's as one of my old bosses used to say, it's just marketing.
That would have been the great name of the podcast if I had thought of that. It's just marketing. And I think we're coming up for titles of books every week as well at this rate, aren't we? It's just
there we
marketing.
go. Yeah, exactly.
All right, mate. Well, thank you for that thought. And where might people find other thoughts of yours if they were to?
You can see it at our little customer community, of which we do not have 250,000 people on, which is our little home on the web called contentadvisory.net.
Uh-huh. But all of those people are treasured, aren't they? I mean, you're not going to go changing that, are you?
It's arguable whether we serve any value at all, but we do try. We do try.
And when the listener spins a dial on the interwebs, where are they going to find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Robert_Rose. And of course, you can find me on LinkedIn by doing a search and doing whatever LinkedIn does.
Yes, whatever LinkedIn does. All right. Well, thanks very much, mate. And will I see you in the bar next week?
You will indeed.
I look forward to it. Thank you, mate. Thank you, Robert. A good lesson. Creating communities is about building trust. And let's not be too quick to leverage or monetize that. What do you think? So that's a wrap on episode 60 of the Rockstar CMO effing marketing podcast. Thanks again to Jeff, Russ and Robert. I really appreciate their time, so please check the show notes, click their links, follow them and take a look at their work. You can find the show notes at rockstarcmo.fm, where you can also find all our previous episodes. But most of all, thank you for dropping a dime into your podcasting jukebox, selecting our track and jiving along with us. Hope you enjoyed the show. Does the world need another effing marketing podcast? Please let me know what you think. Pull up your favourite podcast app, leave a rating, review and subscribe. Or just keep listening. I'm glad you're here. Next week, Jeff is taking a week off. I'm chatting to Margot Bloomstein about her new book, Trustworthy, How the Smartest Brands Beat Cynicism and Bridge the Trust Gap. And as you heard, Robert Rose will be back in our virtual Rockstar CMO bar. Until then, I've been your host, Ian Truscott, and I hope you'll again join us next week here at Rockstar CMO FM.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Christy Heiler hosts a fantastic podcast called Own It. Christy, Tell us more about the show.
Own It is all about celebrating women and non-binary advertising agency owners. We talk about buying out of the Boys Club of Advertising because less than 1% of ad agencies are owned by women.
And where can people subscribe?
You can find the podcast at untilyouownit.com. We're also on the Marketing Podcast Network at marketingpodcast.net. And of course, you can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard her. Go subscribe. This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.